वो दिन आज
अशोक was
1
there, huh?
और 9 बजे क्लेडी आएगा, नीचे का रूम का कमरे का एसी चला देना, ठीक है?
एक मिनट, अशोक को एक बार पूछ लेता हूँ।
Ashok
Huh?
just joined.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm disconnecting Teams.
Who is talking Tamil?
Hello?
Is my screen visible, folks?
No.
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 Oh, I shared already. Okay. Try
Yes,
again.
it is visible.
Visible to me, yes, visible.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, great.
मुझे नहीं दिख रहा है।
170. Okay, so just to set the context, we were reading discipleship, true discipleship. That's the chapter. We stopped at the story of Kalyan on Sunday, and if you recollect, for those of you who heard the audio today, that was very timely. Thank you, Baba. It talked about faith and conviction, right? That was a still story with the farmer and convention. So with that, let's continue. So those of physically,
You can go.
it's page 3.
I'll leave the phone here then.
Twisting out, mute. Start.
Or go upstairs. Can I just? If you're not using, I'll take it up.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not using it just now. I'm using
You
till.
still want it?
Yeah.
Okay, just leave it on audio.
Yes. Okay, I've just muted all the mics. Okay. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Master realized by serving him. That's the subtitle we're starting with. Undivided loyalty to the master does not introduce any narrowness in the sphere of the disciple's life. To serve the master is to serve one's own self in every other self. The master dwells in universal consciousness and wills universal spiritual well-being. To serve the master is therefore to participate in his cause, which is to serve all life. While sharing in the work of the master, the disciple may be required to be in touch with the world. Though moving in the world in accordance with the work allotted him, he is in inward contact with the master as infinite being. Therefore, by sharing in the work of the master, the disciple comes closer to him and becomes an integral part of his consciousness. Serving the master is the quickest means of realizing him. Sharing the work of the master. The service that the disciple can offer the master is not only linked with the universal cause of humanity, but is one of the most potent means of bringing the disciple nearer his spiritual goal. When the disciple's service is spontaneous, wholehearted, selfless, and unconditional, it brings him more spiritual benefit than can ever come by any other means. Serving the master is a joy for the disciple, even when it means an ordeal that tries his body or mind. Service offered under conditions of discomfort or inconvenience is a test of the disciple's devotion. The more trying such service becomes, the more welcome it is for the disciple. And as he voluntarily accepts physical and mental suffering in his devoted service to the master, he experiences the bliss of spiritual fulfillment. Stop me anytime. All the same rules apply. So, allegiance to master. The sense of undivided an absolute loyalty to the master is made possible by the right understanding of what the master is and what he really stands for. If the disciple has an imperfect grasp of the true status and function of the master, he is likely to set up a false antithesis between his own higher self and the master. As a consequence of this antithesis, he might create in his mind an artificial and imaginary conflict between the claims of the master and other claims that seem legitimate. A disciple should be aware from the very beginning that the master only requires the disciple to realize his own higher self. In fact, the master symbolizes this higher self of the disciple and is none other than this higher self, which is the same one reality in all. So I think I'm struggling with the word antithesis. So I'll just read that line again and see if we get it. If the disciple has an imperfect grasp of the true status and function of the master, he is likely to set up a false antithesis between his own higher self and the master. As a consequence of this antithesis, he might create in his mind an artificial and imaginary conflict between the claims of the master and other claims that seem legitimate. A disciple should be aware from the very beginning that the master only requires the disciple to realize his own higher self. In fact, the master symbolizes this higher self of the disciple and is none other than this higher self, which is the same one reality in all. I think it's clear. I hope it's the second read helped. Any points or any discussions here?
What is the actual meaning of antithesis?
Let's look it up. Look up. Opposition, contrast, direct opposite. I think either of this will be. So I think it's just that the construct that we should get used to is that the master is our own higher self, which is in reality the higher self for everybody. But it's not easy to get that in our heads, and that's the point that's being made, is what I get out of it. Any others? No. Okay. So let me continue. Thus, allegiance to the master is only another form of allegiance to one's higher self. This does not mean, however, that merely formal allegiance to the higher self is in any way an adequate substitute for allegiance to the master. The disciple cannot have a clear perception of his own higher self until he is God realized. And often, that which comes to him as his duty is really a prompting of some samskaras interpolating themselves between the higher self and his field of consciousness. The master, on the contrary, is one with the higher self and can make no mistake about right valuation.
These 3-4 paragraphs give a new insight to me, so that serving a master is actually linking up with the master's universal or cosmic work. That is a eye-opener for me. The other thing is recognizing our own higher self or the real self in the master is an easy way, I think. Otherwise, we struggle to realize our own self. So this is the best way. Holding the Daman is the best way to realize our own higher self. Jai Baba.
Brilliant summary. That's exactly what it is.
Jai Baba.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I think the last paragraph where you mentioned if the disciple has an imperfect grasp of the true status and function of the master, he is likely to set up a false antithesis between his own higher self and the master. So, what it implies is that, the false antithesis means that we all have a higher self, which we know, which is different from the ego personality self. So, the false I self is our ego, the ego personality self, and the real I self is the higher self. That same higher self is what the master represents, correct? So, this sentence basically says that the disciple is likely to set up a false antithesis, which happens that sometimes what happens when you are in the spiritual path, you might start looking at yourself separate from the master. Like you have your own higher self, the master is of a different higher self. And I think as you go down reading the next two paragraphs, it will become very clear what this particular line means. So I think that the second part is what Doc Mama said is also correct, that the idea is to just surrender to the higher self of the master rather than looking at our own higher self, because we have not reached that. So till we reach self-realization, we need to focus on the higher self of the master, which is already latent in us, but it is covered by sanskaras, as we know. So that is why the last line says the master, on the contrary, is one with the higher self and can make no mistake about right valuation. See, this word right valuation is something which we have talked about, one of those important words like adjustment, balancing, those kind of things. So right valuation is an important aspect of Vivek and Vairagya, so something that we need to be very cognizant of, that every time we read Baba and every time we do intelligent action of thoughts, words, or deeds, the reference point is what kind of right valuation have we developed? Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba.
Awesome. Any other inputs, questions? Okay, so I'll continue. Is this cases or cases of conflict, right, Kama? Is this a typo or?
I think typo.
Yes,
Cases.
yes, it's a typo. Correct.
Cases of,
you're right.
Yeah.
This is the Indian printing edition. We don't have quality control now. If it was coming from Sherrier Press, it would have been perfect.
In fact, there was a missing two word in the previous paragraph as well. Anyway, that's. I'll continue. Cases of conflict. The disciple, therefore, must always test his own promptings by means of the standards or orders given by the master. In the event of any conflict between the two, he should thoroughly re-examine his own ideas to discover the points wherein they might be short of perfection. Almost always, a little reflection is sufficient to perceive the basic harmony between the true dictates of his own higher self and the requirements of the master. If, however, on some rare occasion the disciple is unable to reconcile the two, he may be sure that he has either not properly understood the dictates of his own higher self, or that he has not properly grasped the import of his master's requirements. In such cases, the master gives latitude to the disciple to follow his own conscience. The master may sometimes give instructions with the intent of preparing his disciple for a higher mode of life. It is under such circumstances that the disciple finds himself confronted by an apparent and temporary variance between his own inclinations and the master's instructions. But usually, the master does not give any instructions for which the disciple has not had inward anticipatory preparation.
Jai Baba, I think these two paragraphs that you just read explains the antithesis part. Where on one side, if the disciple is not clear about his own self and the master's self, and he, as it says, he's not properly grasped the import of his master's requirements, then there is a conflict. That is why, as Doc Mama said, you have to surrender. You should not use your mind when it comes to the master, and don't let your mind dictate or analyze the master's instructions. Jai Baba.
Yeah. Good point.
Jai Baba, Karthik, can you hear me?
Yes.
I
Right.
think that Hafiz is saying that the inability lies in our own minds to understand. I think that that exact part of the saying, I don't have the words, but I think that is a good takeaway, that
Reference. Yes.
the reference is that the inability lies in our own selves to understand the
True.
dictates of the master.
Yeah, about what you hear from the master, never say it is wrong, because, my dear, it's your own incapacity to understand him.
I understand.
That's the line.
That's
Thank
the
you,
line.
Kama. Thank you.
Thank you, Kama. Okay. Let me continue. Meaning of true discipleship. The master is true, supremely impersonal, and always his only concern is to remove the veils between the consciousness of the disciple and his higher self. Therefore, there can never be any real conflict between the allegiance of the disciple to his master and his allegiance to his own higher self. Indeed, at the end of his search, the disciple discovers that the master is none other than his own higher self in another form. The master, in his utter impersonality and unhampered divinity, is so complete that he has no desire. In relation to the disciple, all he requires is that the disciple reconstitute himself in the light of the highest truth. To become a disciple is to begin to tread the path leading toward the spiritual goal. This is the meaning of true discipleship. So, very good chapter, very, very interesting. A lot of things to take away and read again, I'm sure, for all of us. Yeah, so any questions, reactions, insights?
This actually gives a meaning for surrender. So what is the purpose of surrender, or what is the requirement for surrender? So earlier I used to think not knowing or unknowingly you should just surrender to the master. But it's very clear here. The purpose of surrender is for our own spiritual growth. And he is just there to lead us to that. So that is holding to his daman. Jai Baba.
Yeah.
Very well said, actually. That's a very, very, very important point. Yes.
Good. Okay. So if there's anything else, we can continue discussion, or we can go to the next chapter.
All are there?
Yeah, I think as we speak, there are, it says 11 of 12 in the call. I don't know what's
Yes,
11 of 12. That's like a full house, if you ask me.
They're not adding you.
Okay. The ways of the master. So we'll continue. But I really like this classroom setting. Everybody's faces showing up on this bugle rock. The ways of the master, page 153, Jai Baba. Subtitle is Masters Ever Ready to Help. Masters are absolutely impersonal and universal in their consciousness, but for spiritual purposes, they can limit the scope of their work and also allow their manifested personality to become the center of the aspirations of their disciples. They use personal relationships as well-defined channels to pass on their help to those aspirants who become connected with them. The masters are always on the lookout for those who need and deserve their help, and the faintest gleams of spiritual yearnings are not overlooked by them. They foster and promote the advancement of all aspirants in multifarious ways that are unfailingly effective, although they might not necessarily be completely intelligible to others. Nature of their help. The help of a perfect master consists in making the spiritual journey of the aspirant sure and safe, as well as in shortening the time he might otherwise take to arrive at the goal. The aspirant may go a long way through independent search, but he is unable to cross the sixth plane without the help of a master. Even on the intermediate planes of involution of consciousness, the help of a master is extremely valuable because he prevents the aspirant from getting stuck on the way and protects him from the pitfalls and dangers with which the spiritual path is beset. Kabir, the perfect master, has compared the three stages of the path to the three phases of fire. Just as first there is only smoke and no fire, then there is fire enveloped in smoke, and lastly there is only fire without smoke. So the beginnings of the path are enveloped in thick ignorance. Midway there is confused perception of the goal, and finally there is realization of truth without the slightest alloy of illusion. Since the path lies through illusions of many kinds, the aspirant is never safe without the guidance of a master who knows all the stages of the path and can take him through them. Abode of delusion. Before the opening of the inner eye, the mind conceives of the goal as the infinite, and this conception is based upon some symbolic image of infinity, such as the sky or the ocean, which suggests the idea of vastness. Although such a concept of the infinite is clear and well defined, it has to be superseded by direct perception of the infinite. The aspirant sees the self directly when his inner eye of the spirit is opened. When this happens, the mind is dazed by what it sees and is no longer as clear as it was before the opening of this inner eye. Being dazed by the perception of the self, the mind loses its capacity to think clearly and mistakes the seeing of the self with its being actually realized. Hence comes the illusion of being at the end of the path when one is still traversing it. In Sufi terms, this particular part of the path is known as Muqam-e-Afsan, or the abode of delusion. It is in such difficult phases of the path that the master can, through his skillful intervention, give a push to the aspirant so that he keeps on going instead of getting caught up on the way. Contribution of master. In fact, somebody's mic is open. In fact, there is danger of the aspirant being detained on each one of the inner planes because each in its own way is very alluring and serves as a trap for the aspirant. The master either takes the aspirant past these planes or through them without unnecessary delay. However, the aspirant has to walk his own way. The contribution of the master consists in confirming and consolidating the previously acquired intuitions and perceptions of the aspirant, and in precipitating his consciousness into the next stage, which, though unavoidable, is by its nature impossible for the aspirant to anticipate. The next subtitle is implicit faith. The master uses Maya to take the disciple out of Maya. And as he is himself beyond good and evil, he may often require things that are unacceptable and even shocking to the ordinary good sense of his disciples. The best thing for the disciple to do is to follow the instructions of the master with implicit faith without bringing them to the bar of his limited capacity of judgment. The following famous instances illustrate this point. There is the Quranic story of Abraham being called upon to sacrifice his beloved son Ishmael to the Lord. When Abraham, firm in his resolve and faith, was about to slaughter Ishmael, God intervened and accepted the sacrifice of a ram as ransom for the son. When Shams-e-Tabriz ordered Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, his disciple, to fetch wine for him, he unflinchingly complied in order to please and win the grace of his master. At the time, the Maulana commanded a large following of Muslim divines because of his reputation as a great theologian in the Islamic world, and wine is religiously prohibited, haram, to the Muslims. Hence, it was a crucial test for the Maulana to carry a jar of wine on his shoulders through the streets, but he did it. Ghaus Ali Shah was asked by one of his masters, who lived in a hut by the side of the river Ganges, to fill a vessel with water for drinking, but only from midstream. It was about midnight, and the river Ganges was in heavy flood because of the monsoon. The disciple hesitated at first, but finally gathered courage to attempt the impossible, believing in the omniscience of the master. No sooner had he stepped into the angry waters of the Ganges than he witnessed the wonderful transformation of the scene. Instead of surging waves and floods, the river had turned into a thin stream, and the vessel to be filled almost touched the riverbed. The disciple nearly crossed the river to the opposite bank in search of midstream. While thus occupied, the master appeared on the scene and asked him the reason for his delay. When Ghaus Ali Shah explained that the mid-current could not be located, the master allowed him to fill the vessel by handfuls and himself helped in the process. The master then left the disciple on some pretext, asking him to follow immediately after filling the vessel. When Ghaus Ali Shah returned to the hut with the vessel full of water, he was bewildered to learn from other disciples that the master had never left the hut for a minute during his absence, but was talking to them all the while about him. Ordinary Methods is the subtitle. These stories show how the masters may use their powers on the rare occasions to break down the ego of their disciples or help them further along the path. As a rule, the masters are very sparing in their use of their divine powers, and they never use them unless it is absolutely necessary for spiritual purposes. Ordinarily, they secure their purposes through normal, mundane ways. While doing so, they not only exhibit great understanding, a keen sense of humor, unending patience, and consummate tact, but they also take great trouble to help their disciples and adjust themselves in numberless ways to whatever might be entailed by the needs of the situation. Story of Bahlul. Some of these points are effectively brought out by the story of the great mystic Bahlul. Bahlul wanted to contact certain notables of Persia for reasons of his own. The only way to do this was to go to the prince's party that was attended by these notables. Unfortunately, Bahlul was bald-headed, and in those days, no one without hair was allowed to attend a party given by the prince. The prince had lost all his hair, and to see others without hair reminded him of it and prevented him from enjoying the party. Since the prince was very sensitive on this point, no one bald was allowed to come to the party. So when bald Bahlul went to the party in his shabby clothes, he was thrown out. The party lasted for 3 days. However, the party lasted for 3 days, however, and on the second day, Bahlul borrowed some fine clothes and a wig, disguised himself, and again went to the party. During the party, no one recognized Bahlul, and in his fine clothes, he made a great impression upon all the notables. He made himself so agreeable that even the prince offered him a warm welcome and invited him to sit near him. No sooner was Bahlul seated than he winked at the prince. The prince did not understand the meaning of his winking, but vaguely felt that such a gesture from an illustrious man like him must mean something important. Thinking that it immediately required a suitable response, he also winked. Those who were nearby saw this exchange of winking and felt impelled to imitate them. They also winked at each other, and soon the winking spread throughout the crowd, so that for 5 minutes the party saw nothing but winking. Then Bahlul cried, "Stop, O you wise men, why do you wink?" And the notables replied, "We are winking because you great men were winking. We only imitate you." Then immediately Bahlul took off his wig and said, "We too are both bald. Imitate us." The notables then went away, and on the third day they all came with shaved heads. Then Bahlul turned to the prince and said, "We too are permanently bald. These men will have to shave their heads daily in order to remain bald." Thus, through his tactful handling and sense of humor, he secured access to those whom he wanted to help. Dealings with failings of disciple. The Sadguru takes infinite pains to contact and win over the disciple for spiritual life. Since the progress of the disciple is secured only if his love for the master is not allowed to dwindle, he takes every care to remove all obstacles that might be standing in the way of the wholehearted devotion of the disciple. If sometimes he is seen to humor the individual nature of the disciple, it is only to keep those obstacles from creating a serious impediment in his way. Sometimes he might even seem to feed the ego of the disciple, but all this is just allowing full scope to the ignorance of the disciple. It is only a preparation for the final extinguishing of his ego, just as animals to be offered in sacrifice are carefully nurtured before their annihilation. The master is himself beyond good or evil and is not perturbed by the failings of the disciple. He tolerates them with unfailing patience and infinite capacity to wait, knowing fully well that once the disciple gets established on the path, these failings will be swiftly washed away. Once the master is satisfied that the disciple is firmly established on the path, he is keen to cleanse the mind of the disciple of all blemishes. Often, he achieves this task even at the risk of appearing ruthless, just as when a surgeon, completely disregarding the protests of the patient, is active with his knife. Ultimately, the disciple cannot fail to see that all such measures are really in his interest. Therefore, he is never pushed away from his master, but is drawn closer to him in the very process of the cleansing that might have appeared irksome or painful. Help through praise. The usual method of the master, however, is as sweet and agreeable for the disciple as it is effective. The master is very pleased when the disciple shows any real progress in the spiritual life. By conferring well-merited praise on the disciple, he confirms in him the spiritual qualities he is in the process of realizing and arouses in him the confidence that will enable him to cope with any situation. The glow of noble emotion, a gesture of self-denial, a heroic sacrifice, or an incident revealing extraordinary patience or love or faith, any one of these is sufficient to make the master happy and evoke his approbation. The usual method of the master to encourage the good qualities in the disciple is plain and unconcealed appreciation of his attainments. The disciple soon begins to value the master's approval and delights in it more than in anything else. He is ready to resist the greatest of temptations and undergo the most trying ordeals, which would otherwise have seemed impossible to him, if only he knows that this will make the master happy. I'll pause here. Any thoughts, questions, discussions?
Jai Baba, I think this chapter is a follow-up to the previous chapter that was about discipleship. What are the requirements of a disciple to follow the master or surrender to the master? And this one is about what the master does to the disciple. In fact, in the first paragraph, in the first beginning of the chapter, there was the line, masters are always on the lookout for those who need and deserve their help. And the faintest gleams of spiritual earnings are not overlooked by them. So this is a clear case of, the teacher comes when the student is ready.
Yeah.
So that is a very important part here, that whenever aspirant is, I think before discipleship happens, true discipleship is when you completely surrender to the master. But before you get that conviction that this is the master, then you are the spiritual aspirant. So what happens is, from my own experience, I've seen the mind goes through fluctuations. Yes, he is not, my teacher. And then you go through this waxing and waning in terms of your relationship with your master. And then one day you will see certain signs, mostly in terms of reinforcements that, yes, you are on the right track. And I think he does it in different ways for different people, using signs and miracles and coincidences and so on. And then it says, the second paragraph, even on the intermediate planes of involution of consciousness, the help of a master is extremely valuable because he prevents the aspirant from getting stuck on the way and protects him from the pitfalls and dangers with which the spiritual path is beset. I think this is a clear indication of what we know about the planes, especially the fourth plane, which is dangerous. So even the spiritual planes of involution till the fourth plane is we are in danger. And the other thing, in the second, the next page 154, he talks about, that the direct perception of the infinite, the aspirant sees the self directly when his inner eye of the spirit is opened. When this happens, the mind is dazed by what it sees and is no longer as clear as it was before the opening of this inner eye. Being dazed by the perception of the self, the mind loses its capacity to think clearly and mistakes the seeing of the self with its being actually realized. Hence comes the illusion of being at the end of the path when one is still traversing it. In Sufi terms, this particular part of the path is known as Mukami Afsan, or the abode of delusion. I think this particular paragraph is very clear about the pitfalls on the path. And I believe we have noticed in our society, in our current civilization, the so-called, Babas and Swamis who claim to have self-realized and are living in the abode of delusion, So I think we are very fortunate, to be able to recognize this fact and see how people are, attracted to these people. And these are people who are themselves deluded, the Babas or whatever. And the second thing is, I think this is also an example of the must. And here it gives me an indication why Baba traveled around India to meet musts, not only to do inner work with them, but also to lift them from the plane that they were stuck to the higher planes, which we see in the four stories, the analogies that have been given here. So I can tell you the first story of the Quranic story of Abraham being called upon to sacrifice his beloved son. So this comes under the category of loss, love, obedience, surrender, sacrifice. And Shamsi Tabriz was asked to fetch wine for, when ordered Rumi to his disciple to fetch wine for him and to win the grace of his master. And Rumi was a scholar of the highest kind. He was like almost like a vice chancellor of a university, and he was like a Renaissance man, if I'm correct about his background. And he, despite his reputation in the society, did that. So that is a form of surrender. Then Gaushali Shah about going to the Ganges and filling the vessel because his master asked him, and the master appears to him, right, in mid current. This example is again what I have mentioned earlier of this guy Papaji, Punjaji. Very interesting case study example of Ramana Maharshi appearing as a mendicant in his house in Lahore. And Ramana Maharshi was in Tiruvannamalai at that time, So I won't go into the details, but it clearly tells you how the master can manifest, in different forms, in your dreams and in physical form. And then the fourth one, which is about the great mystic Balul, who wanted to contact certain notables of Persia for reasons of his own, I kind of find it humorous, when Baba went to Hollywood and he met all these famous Hollywood actors. So one was the story of Balul kind of, resonates with me, when Baba went to Hollywood. Probably he knew there were some Hollywood personalities who were spiritually oriented and he wanted to give them his blessing, And also we know that Baba was very, he knew that the cinema medium was a very powerful medium. And today we see with YouTube and so many of these things how powerful it is. So that is one thing that came out here. And then the dealings with failings of disciple, page 157, there is one line which says, the master tolerates them with unfailing patience and infinite capacity to wait, knowing full well that once the disciple gets established on the path, these failings will be swiftly washed away. So it reminded me of this quote which I use, intense effort and infinite patience, which is what the disciple is supposed to do when he's on the path. So it is very interesting to see that the master is also having unfailing patience and infinite capacity, and vice versa. The spiritual aspirant should not keep saying, oh, when am I going to get self-realized? You just have to make that intense effort and have that infinite patience, So, yeah, that's about it. Jai Baba.
One thought which comes to me with all these examples given by Baba here is that we as say disciples should study the life history of Baba in two different stages. One is the way Baba was instructed by the five masters before he actually started awakening all the people around. Then how Baba actually say awakened people, and any examples how he actually did it with individual examples. So if we can study these two in this light, it will be a great help for us to learn better, I think. Jai Baba.
Yeah, that's a good point. How's your Lord Meher coming along? You started
Yes.
reading it. You're still at it every day?
Not every day, but
Okay.
I was unable to continue that. Anyway, I will make my effort.
Yeah, sure. In fact, I also keep thinking I have not started it. Okay, let's continue. The subtitle is Solution of All Problems. Since the master is for the aspirant a symbol of the supreme self in all, the problem of true adjustment to the master appears to him to be the same as realizing his own inner divinity and arriving at true adjustment with all other forms of the supreme self. Through his allegiance to the master, the aspirant achieves conscious appreciation of the fundamental unity of these problems. From the psychological point of view, he is in a position to tackle them not as separate problems, but as aspects of one problem. Thus, he can arrive at true integration, which is different from a temporary compromise between conflicting claims. In order to help the disciple achieve this difficult task, the master has to become the nucleus of all the spiritual idealism of the aspirant, because intensive concentration of mental energy is necessary if the aspirant is to break through the many barriers that lie between him and his goal. Supreme claim of one's own master. The supreme claim of the master cannot be challenged or limited even by the spontaneous reverence that the disciple is bound to feel for masters other than the one who has accepted him. All perfect masters are one in their consciousness, and it is absurd to imagine any grades between them. Though one master is not greater than another, the disciple must, for his own purposes, place the claim of his own master over and above the claims of other masters until he transcends the domain of duality and realizes the unity of all life. Mental energy would be dissipated unless there arose a supremely imperative claim among the many conflicting claims of life. Exclusive concentration upon one master is therefore usually indispensable for the gathering up of the dispersed mental energy of the disciple. In very rare cases, owing to special circumstances, the masters themselves might decide to share the spiritual work in relation to a particular disciple. There are therefore exceptional cases of the disciples who have had to affiliate themselves to two or more masters. This is an exception rather than the rule, and where there are more masters than one, they arrange the distribution of their work so carefully that they do not set up any conflict of claims. Yeah, that sounds very corporate. Unity of command.
Jai Baba Karthik.
Yeah, Khaled.
Yeah. On the subtitle Supreme Claims of One's Own Master, this line, though one master is not greater than another, the disciple must, for his own purpose, place the claims of his own master over and above the claims of the other master until he transcends the domain of duality and realizes the unity of life. Mental energy would be dissipated unless there rose a supremely imperative claim among the many conflicting claims of life. This sounds a little difficult to grasp. And secondly, if anyone from the group can put it up into an example of one's daily life vis-a-vis this sentence that is here, maybe that will help us.
Jai Baba, what I've understood here is, let me tell you on the spiritual aspect. Like when you look at Baba's life, there was one Mandali called Gustad Ji. Now we know that there were 5 perfect masters, and Gustad Ji was with Baba Jan. Okay, first he used to, Baba Jan used to suddenly take off. She would walk on the streets of Pune. And during heavy rainfall, she would just walk, and Gustaji had to pack all her belongings, especially her bed, and walk behind her, following her. Then he came to Upasani Maharaj, and he was a disciple of Upasani Maharaj. Then Upasani Maharaj told Gustaji to go to Meher Baba. So he is a very, very rare and unique example of what the last line says here. There are therefore exceptional cases of disciples who have had to affiliate themselves to two or more masters. This is an exception rather than the rule. And also we noticed that after Baba Baba finished his, work with Upasani Maharaj in 1921, Upasani Maharaj instructed his followers, including Mehra's mother and other people, to go join Meher Baba. And he said, under any circumstances, don't leave Baba's daman. And I mentioned earlier that later on, Upasani Maharaj used to abuse Baba, in different ways, like, backbiting, writing letters, communicating, and all that stuff. On the material side, I think this is very clearly like, suppose you're doing your PhD thesis, you can only have one guide. You can't jump around in the same department with different guides. And also, according to the literature that I have read in, Baba and other literature, all of us have very unique sanskaras. And because of our unique sanskaras, we have particular perfect masters or avatars that we are connected with. For example, the guy who wrote In Search of Secret India, Paul Brunton, he came to India to meet different perfect masters. He met Baba Jan. He met Meher Baba. He also met Chandrasekhar Swamiri, the Kamakoti Peetam in Kanchipuram, who was 5th or 6th plain saint, who actually directed Paul Brunton to Ramana Maharishi. And finally, Paul Brunton settled and, he stayed there, met Ramana Maharishi, wrote a lot of books. And in fact, his book In Search of Secret India is one of the 2 books, apart from Autobiography of a Yogi, which attracted a lot of Westerners to Indian spirituality. So I think what is clear here is, in another chapter in Discourses, Baba says it, that initially the spiritual aspirant, when he's doing spiritual shopping, he is allowed to go and check everybody out, because the mind is always the barrier. But as soon as he gets 100% conviction that, yes, this is the particular teacher, again, it happens with the grace of the perfect master, because you can't choose the master chooses you. Just as in the material world, the PhD guy chooses the student. I think there's a lot of background noise. Somebody has to. Now, so the important thing out here is that we need, the student can't choose the PhD guide. The PhD guide, chooses the student whom he wants to work with, it's not 100% perfect. So similarly, I think each aspirant has a particular master based on their prarabdha karma. This is my understanding. Jai Baba.
Yeah, I think the last part kind of describes Khalid's question. Khalid, do you agree? So a lot depends on the conviction and finalizing your master. But once you have, then you just have to stick to that. Yeah, go ahead.
Similar to being born in a family or another family. It's just like that, depending on sanskaras.
Yeah, basically the 100% what you call acceptance or 100% belief that the master that I follow is the master that has chosen me and is master that I as a drop soul need. So the 100% conviction is what is important. Until that 100% conviction is devoid to us, we are unable to imbibe in the master, and then we keep about, as it's called, spiritual shopping. That's my understanding. Jai Baba.
Yes, I think that what you said is correct. See, even after getting intellectual conviction, and also getting experiential conviction. Okay. For example, personally for me in 97, when Baba appeared to me through Pete Townshend of The Who, it was an intellectual conviction for me. Then 2009, I had a mystical experience, like a flashback of an incident, where that intellectual conviction became experiential, because there was a duality between mind and heart. The heart had intuitively accepted, the mind was going through the 80-20 rule. So I was going through a lot of conflict, believe it or not. And now when I look back, what I realize is the teacher comes when the student is ready. So even that transition period, the grace of the master is important. And now what I feel is, now that I'm completely, devoted to Baba, or, but am I doing the job? The real work starts even after getting 100% intellectual and experiential conviction. Am I able to, focus, as he says, exclusive concentration upon one master is therefore usually indispensable for the gathering up of the dispersed mental energy of the disciple. So I go through this dispersion of my mental energy. And I think he also says, in order to help the disciple achieve this difficult task, the master has to become the nucleus of all the spiritual idealism of the aspirant, because intensive concentration of mental energy is necessary if the aspirant is to break through the many barriers that lie between him and his goal. I think he's talking to me about what I'm going through, So I think that is where the word provisional working ego is a great example of how the master can become the nucleus of the spiritual idealism of the aspirant. Jai Baba.
Brilliant. Any other thoughts and questions? None, and we have some time. So why don't everybody switch on your cameras and we get a pic of this together mode. There's one. Let me also come on. There, everybody comes on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 more to go. Yeah, the resolution is not that great, right? Okay. 8. Kama. Ashok. Somebody's wearing a mask. Who's that? That's.
I think it's Sanjay.
Yeah.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Oh, that's Ashok. Okay, Ashok is outside.
But I can't see that. I can't see the title. I can't see the title.
The names. Names, right?
Yeah, I can't see the video tiles.
No, so you'll have to select something called together mode. Right? On the left.
Let me try.
Yeah.
Not sure if it's
next to the names.
available on
Next
the
to the
mobile.
names. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe it's not available in the mobile.
I
Yeah,
can't see
it's
the
not on
picture.
the mobile.
On the mobile, I'm on the mobile. I can't see any video.
Yeah, the grid mode is the usual mode what we had in the Teams.
Yeah.
Oh yes, grid mode. I can see now.
Yes.
Yes.
Grid,
Now
grid
switch
view.
to.
Yeah, I can see. Got it.
You can, grid view or together mode, which is the other one. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
in the
together
grid
mode.
view, I can see only Karthik, nobody else. Now I see it. I can see. Yeah.
No, you go to the large grid, everybody is here.
I can't see. How to see?
I also
Yes,
can't
large
see.
grid.
On top, there is an icon. Now it is in large grid for me. I can see everyone.
1, 2,
I
3,
can
4,
see
5, 6, 7,
8.
Who's
Yes.
missing?
Turn on the grid
7 of
view.
Kama went back.
Grid view.
Ah,
7.
Okay. So I think we have surely come a long way. After struggling with themes even through last year, the early part of last year, we were able to switch technology live on a call. So we went successfully from themes to an alternate platform and we had a full house. Thank you, Baba. Right? So this is good. So we'll figure out what's going on with Teams, and I'll post on the Telegram channel about what we do tomorrow. Would that be fine?
okay.
Yes, perfectly good. Thank
Sure.
you.
I would like to read the 3 Meher Baba's favorite couplets of Hafiz, mystical
Sure.
Persian poet. So I think
Sure.
it becomes relevant here
Sure.
for what we have read now.
Please.
Befitting a fortunate slave, carry out every command of the master without any question of why and what. The first one. About what you hear from the master, never say it is wrong, because, my dear, the fault lies in your own incapacity to understand him. Third one. I am slave of the master who has released me from ignorance. Whatever my master does is of the highest benefit to all concerned. So why I chose this is because he has given 3 levels of, as we read here in the text. So how we relates to the master and the disciple. So is there any connection between these 3 couplets, and that has to be thought of.
Yeah. Sanjay has posted
Absolutely.
an
I
image.
think, you have to remember that I think we have mentioned this before. If you don't read any of the Baba literature and you want to just know 3 messages that Baba wanted to give, this was the Hafiz 3 couplets, which Baba deliberately, or even, just before he dropped his body, he requested or instructed his Mandali to bring this couplets, and that is why you will see this couplet in the Mandali hall in Mehrazad. It is also in Baba's bedroom. And if we follow these 3 postulates, because it is about love, obedience, surrender, sacrifice to the master. And so when you look at, the first couplet, befitting a fortunate slave, carry out every command of the master. Here you can put the name Meher Baba, because our master is Meher Baba. I do that subliminally when I read it. So, befitting a fortunate slave, carry out every command of the master without asking any question of why and what. So, it's a form of obedience. About what you hear from the master, never say it is wrong, because, my dear, it's your own incapacity to understand him. So, here you don't have to use the mind, because the mind is always coming in between, to always question or analyze. So, that is our conditioned mind. And I am the slave of the master who has released me from ignorance. Whatever my master does is of the highest benefit to all concerned. So I think what is interesting here is that it is not just for yourself. Whatever is the master is doing is for the benefit of the whole universe. So we are just a cog in the wheel, like, a jigsaw piece puzzle. So whenever we follow the master, it is not just or obey the master and do his bidding. We are not only doing something which will benefit us, we are also doing the work of the master, because he's got the universal mind and the universal body and the universal energy, and he's, controlling this whole universe. So that is one kind of interpretation you can see. There are many interpretations. Jai Baba.
So, Jai Baba, so that means that whatever is happening in this new world order is also, for the benefit of everybody. Can we construe that?
Always. Everything. See, in my presentation that I gave to the group in the Zoom, I have made the title Everything is Perfect. So when you look at the macro world, when you look at your own life, you will see that, everything is running perfectly. For example, I mentioned earlier that the distance between the sun, earth, and moon are so perfectly tuned. Even if a plus or minus deviation in their distance, there wouldn't be any life on earth. So when you look at the whole universe, and both in the waking state and the sleep state, everything is perfect, except for one thing, the human mind. The human mind is the only one thing which is going through chaos and confusion. And I would also send you a link. I think I've sent it. There is something called the Mandelbrot's set, on the fractal geometry. And fractal geometry is a beautiful way of looking at nature scientifically. And also, there are many papers now and YouTube presentation on fractal geometry and spirituality. So you should check it out. So Baba himself has said in discourses that before he even descends, the advent of the avatar, the divine plan has already been set, the script, the divine script. So everything is happening for the best, anyway, because as I said, in Baba's time, World War I, World War II happened. Now, this is Corona is like a World War III of the inner kind, Jai Baba.
Thank you. Jai Baba.
Great. So, anything else before we wrap up?
Tomorrow, what platform we are joining?
We'll find out. Baba will tell us. So,
Yes.
Otherwise, we have a very good backup. So, we'll keep this link alive.
Yes.
And if we have trouble, we'll just switch. Right. So, I'll keep watching Telegram to see if anybody has trouble, because I've done nothing to the meeting, and probably it's something on the Microsoft side. Yeah.
I want to know why Sanjay has been kicking us all out.
Huh?
Sanjay
Why
has been
Sanjay?
kicking the people out. He kicked
Oh,
Kali,
yeah,
he kicked me out, and just wondering, is he mad at us or what?
Sanjay ji, sorry.
Sanjay, are you there? He's doing something and he's kicking us out.
Oh, anybody can throw anybody out, is it?
I don't know.
Oh yeah, remove from
Sanjay
call. Anybody can do it. I don't know.
Sorry, Sanjay, we came back.
I think he's not there. He's left.
He's not there. He kicked himself out, probably.
Probably.
All right. Have a great weekend ahead, and look forward to seeing all of you on Sunday.
Remember, Meher Baba is our
Jai
master.
Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba at
Jai
home.
Baba,
Both of you.
Yes, at home.
Okay. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, everybody.
Jai Baba.